convention or whatever it is.
Oh, is that Mitchell with Emma?
Mitchell Armstrong, no.
Oh, that's a different Mitchell. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, next year Shane and I will be there. I actually have a wedding that I have to get to that week, so I know I couldn't get there.
Hey,
So.
MHI, I think MHI is where it's at too. And this is not like one of the higher attendance events between them. So you're not missing out on much. But I will take diligent notes and grab anything I can for you that's there.
Yeah, that's fabulous.
I'm mainly just sitting in with the lady that I'm consulting right now on the parking in Carrollton, Georgia, is mainly the reason. I probably wouldn't go if I wasn't making a site visit to Carrollton, but since I'm going to be there, it just happened to back up to it. So
yeah,
I'm like, whatever, let's do it.
All right, Jason.
Are we live? Yeah,
we are live, ready.
We are live, not memory.
Show.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on. I was talking to Shane at the beginning of this, Cindy, saying, if you had some things you wanted to lead with, or your group has expressed questions prior to, that's fine. I don't have to stick to this, these handouts here, which I've talked to Shane about, and I'll touch on that before we hang up here. But
start off, and then we can everyone jump in. Jason doesn't bite, ask your questions away, and he will definitely answer them. So I start off.
Jason, before we get real deep in the weeds, a lot of people may not know who you are and how you got into real estate investing, let alone mobile home park investing. Take us back to where it all began. You were probably sitting back in the backseat of the high school and trying to figure out what you want to do with your life. And you said, mobile home park investor. That's what I want to be.
So that is not how it happened. Here's what happened. Long story short, without rewinding the story too far back, I was working side by side of Dennis Long, who was the CEO of Anheuser-Busch for 27 years. And that's really where I learned how to operate a business from the paper standpoint. And no computers, no spreadsheets. You had to write everything out by hand, by pencil. And I didn't like him for it at the time, but now I understand why he made me do it. Because now a spreadsheet on the computer is like second nature. So then I was recruited by the Ritz-Carlton as the food and beverage director. Got ran over by a drunk driver on my bicycle. Come to find out, I was having a daughter who's now 11. I've had full custody of her for 8 years. It's just her and I. We live in Clayton, Missouri, which is a small little suburb in St. Louis. And shortly before COVID, maybe, I don't even know when that was. It's maybe been 4 or 5 years. My best friend, since we've been 15 or 16, called me at 6 a.m. I'm not a morning person. My brain starts at about 11. I like to, get in the shower at 9 o'clock, and 6 a.m. And he's like, "Do you have any interest in mobile home parks?" And I love him to death. I just hung up the phone, right? It's not at 6 a.m. I don't want to talk to you, much less I don't even know what a mobile home park is at that time. So I woke up later that day, started researching, and I'm like, this is kind of lucrative. Let's see what's going on. And he had just landed his first property in Granite City, Illinois. And I said, I really want to see what's going on here. So I put on jeans and boots, and I said, tell your maintenance guy you got a new hire. I'm on my way out there, and I'm going to work with him for a day. I ended up working with that guy for like 5 days straight, learned how to heat tape lines underneath trailers. I learned everything that they were doing wrong as the maintenance guy, who no longer worked for us shortly after, once I came on board, just from what I saw. But I've been boots on the ground. And when we started, it was boots on the ground every single day. I'm very fortunate now that I'm able to work from home and mainly run operations out of our office. In November, we made a really good decision to hire Blank Family Communities to manage about 500 of our pads. And for the percentage wise versus the headaches, at that point, it's worth the money. But you really can't afford it until you get above that 300, or some will say 500. And at that point, you really take a look at your life and you say, okay, how can I make this easier while still doing what I like? And with Nick and I, he has his lane and I have my lane, and I kind of stay in the acquisitions lane. And between the two of us, we know what each other's thinking. So it's just a really good, fortunate relationship that I think God put in our laps together. And we're both, if you guys can't already tell, like, we're super hungry, we're super aggressive. And when it comes to clocking in and clocking out, that's never even a thought on our head, right? We're spending time with our family, or we're sleeping, or, if I'm watching a movie, I'm probably thinking about the next deal down the line. And I know that the model I'm doing right now, it's not sustainable. 16-hour days sometimes. There's a whole lot that goes into it. For anybody in the group that's put a park under contract, you could spend the first hour of 14 with the seller just talking about their cats, right? And if that's what you have to do, then you better be genuinely interested in their cats if you're genuinely interested in the park. Because, like all humans, we connect when we feel understood. And when you're talking to someone who you feel either doesn't understand you, or isn't listening, or isn't paying attention, you lose you lose that engagement factor. You disengage because they're disengaged, and it just doesn't go anywhere from that. I don't know if that answered the question.
It does. And so much of not just this industry, but sales in general is about that connection, right? Building that rapport with people. And we can go probably do a whole show about doing that, building that rapport and genuine engagement, and making that connection, that spark. Because you're right, if you don't have it, it's an uphill battle. It's always an uphill battle, but the hill's steeper.
The hill's much steeper. And
yeah,
I think over the past 2 years, I've hoarded information, and for a hobby, I just like to write. I have so much on my mind. I have to get it out, and the only way to do it is in these large brain dumps. So years and years of collecting brain dumps. I'm fortunate enough now I don't have to go back and actually edit the brain dump, but I can utilize ChatGPT or AI to say, hey, can you edit this for me and give it back to me, right? It's my writing, it's just reorganized. And then a week ago, I just started Elephant Capital Mobile Home Parks, Elephants in the Room, okay? And everybody's like, oh, you need to have interviews of this, and that's what all podcasts are about, interviews and learning. But where I'm going with that is geared, Shane, more towards the other aspect of this industry that's often left out in these conversations, and that is securing the connection and just the psychology of dealing with humans in general, right? Just if you're getting a coffee, there's a proper way to ask for it and a proper way not to. Things that are applicable not only to our lives probably first, but then also they roll right into this industry. And without them, you're a step behind, right? Just kind of like you are in life. If you walk up to Starbucks, say, give me a large effing grande, they're not going to be super pleased. So if you politely order it just the right way, and all that is just a matter of, awareness and how you're talking to people. And again, just genuinely be interested. And if you're not genuinely interested, then you're probably not genuinely interested in the park. Some of these mom and pop operators are going on 40 or 50 years. It's not just a financial transaction. It's emotion. And one of the things I deal with a lot of times with the amount of deal flow that I have is, well, yeah, I know that's what it's worth and that's what the bank says, but like, it's just so dear to my heart. And like, what's dear to your heart for another 250,000. I can't pay for that, but I definitely relate that it's your baby. And here's our plan on how we're going to continue raising your child like you've done such a great job over the past 40 years versus I can pay you because you love it, right? I love a lot of things that I would like to sell for a whole lot of money that I'm not going to get because they're not worth it. They're only worth it to me because I love them. So yeah, that's one of the many objections or so I might hear from sellers. And then right now, obviously, it's tougher to hit that 3-point spread to get your 20% cash on cash because of the way interest rates are. And there seems to be two stances here. And it's one, like I'm holding until interest rates drop, or two, I'm going to try to spread this out as best as I can. And I'm no financial analyst. I've been in this business long enough to see the waves and the ups and downs of it. I think I just the last podcast I ripped was maybe 7 minutes on just the contrarian cycles, the economic cycles, right? A contrarian odyssey through rough seas, economic cycles. And when people say, oh, don't buy a house now because of interest rates, I have a different opinion. I say, go ahead and buy now. And you refinance later. Rates might go up towards the election, just like every election, right? They go down a little bit. Be prepared maybe to refi if you're in that position. But they can only go so high before everything collapses. And if everything collapses at that point, well, everybody's out of it, right? Everybody's back to square one. So the biggest thing about being an entrepreneur and being in this business is what I see a lot of paralysis through analysis. And you get out of a boot camp and you're so excited, everything's good on paper. And either A, you overlook the fact that once you buy it, there's a lot of work that goes into operating a property, right?
As I've come to find out.
As you've come to find out, yeah. There's a property that I'm consulting on out of state right now. And I got a phone call and, long story short, there was a mass exodus in play. About 40 tenants, right? Within 72 hours of not sleeping, I had all of them converted to tenant-owned homes and new lot leases executed. Wow. And it took me like 3 years to do that on one of my parts. So I don't know how I did that. That's a miracle story, but it just happened. And when I say my parts, Nick Najar is my part, so ours. And all of our stuff lands under ACS Communities, and then there's Elephant Capital Partners, which I kind of spearhead, which is our acquisition arm.
I have a bad habit of just going off the cuff and having a conversation, and there's been more than one guest on the show that we've talked for an hour, covered a lot of great topics, and then go, oh yeah, we had this really cool slide we wanted to show you. So I'm going to take a break here. I want to pull up the slide presentation that you sent. Let's kind of talk through it, because I have already lined up in front of me like 20 questions that we've already kicked off, some great ideas. But I don't want to get too far.
Yeah, and if you're talking about that PDF, that's fine. Let me go ahead and kind of breeze through some of that on a high level overview.
Sure.
For everybody in the group, I have asked Shane to send this out kind of just as a parting gift. It's not going to make or break your life, but it's a little bit of insight from somebody who's been doing this maybe for a little longer. I try to surround myself too with people that are smarter than me so I can continue to learn. And then we'll have one more kind of surprise handout at the end. But when we're just talking about the pros and cons of like owning and operating a park, obviously there's advantages and disadvantages, and you definitely want to consider those factors. Pros, if everything's going right, you have steady income, consistent, stable source of money. Hopefully it's a double source, right? You have that steady income, the passive income from the park, plus your exit on the back end. And you do make more money on the buys and sells typically than you do just on that steady income. Just as far as other asset classes are involved, relatable to our industry, affordable housing is just where it's at. There's not enough of it. They've stopped building it. There's people are going homeless. At some point, they're going to have to figure it out, right? And I hope all of us are right there, ready to jump in and to fill our paths. But typically, just in comparison, you have lower maintenance costs. That's why tenant-owned homes are so attractive, because you're not getting calls like, "Hey, fix my sink," or what I found out, renters will kick holes in your walls. Homeowners won't. You have that potential for high cash flow. We're talking about the whole US here, right? So there's a diverse tenant base. Diverse tenant base catering to a specific diverse demographic, right? Retirees, young families, lower income, people looking for affordable housing options, and then, if we're out in California, it's a lifestyle choice at that point. And then the hope that you have long-term tenants. The cons, depending on where you're at, if you don't do your due diligence on your tenant on the way in, their income's not supported, you're looking at a lot of seasonal vacancy, ton of park-owned homes, you're looking at a lot of infrastructure maintenance, and even if you have all tenant-owned homes, there's common areas, there's utilities that you're responsible for up until the home. There might be an office or infrastructure that all can be costly and time consuming, so it's something to look for. Another thing to check for, zoning and regulatory challenges. I could go off on a tangent here on a 30-minute story on how we've conquered those, but at the end of the day, my position is it's our land, we can use it how we want, and nobody should be able to tell us different. And I will kind of stick to that regardless of what I'm being told by the county or zoning, because 5 times, most recently, I think in Ohio, where there were zoning issues and infill was a problem, it's made its way to the Supreme Court, and it's always favored in the opposite. The cons, when we're talking about this, you could have the tenant quality. We're dealing with individuals who are looking for affordable housing, and managing those individuals on some level can be demanding. You can talk to Shane, who is an operator, if you're not already, or any operator. And there's just a risk of dealing with problematic tenants. A way to kind of be proactive with that is to make sure your community guidelines, your park rules and regulations kind of cover every single base. So in the event that there's 6 mattresses out front, you can just reference line 42A, and right here, 1 mattress outside is okay, but anything over than that is a violation. And then at 3 violations, you have to manage them out properly, just like if you were the Ritz-Carlton or a corporation. And you got depreciation. They can be capital intensive depending on the lift. And then, there's always a market risk. The demand, again, for mobile homes can be influenced by various economic factors, but I think at this point, the demand is so high and the supply is so low. An economic downturn is actually, unfortunately, a really good thing for the affordable housing industry. If you go back through Frank Rolfe's prior days, one thing that stayed consistent is gold, silver, and affordable housing, and more importantly, mobile home parks. Gold and silver are pretty shiny. They look great. Mobile home parks pay out more on the long run. So location, market demand, your ability to manage the property, and those skills can be developed over time, dealing with other individuals that are professional in the space. And then, something that you learn typically the hard way is that ability to navigate through regulatory challenges, like surrounding zone. Moving along, everybody looks at mobile home parks as sexy, right? Well, they either look at it as sexy or not sexy. It's subjective. It's not a universal sentiment. Neither is the fact that this park might work for Cindy and Shane, and it might not work for John and Jim. But it works for me. It's attractive to some individuals for various reasons. For the most part, I think we're all here to build empires for either our kids or our grandkids or ourselves and gain financial independence. If you're in this space, you are an entrepreneur, whether you know it or not, because you've already jumped into a space where it's full of entrepreneurial opportunities, and you're attempting to capitalize on that. You're establish yourself with a great group of individuals, and that's what we need in life. That goes back to point one, where we all need to feel understood, right? And that kind of drives us. That passive income potential, that comes in time. Your first park is the hardest one to get, and typically it's not as passive as maybe you originally anticipated. Only because you don't know what you don't know until you don't know, right?
Right.
You get the real estate appreciation. If you are just brand new and it's like first time, and I'm here in Cindy and Shane's group, I just want to figure out what do I need to pay attention to, right? If I'm going to purchase a new mobile home park, and you haven't taken a boot camp, like, what do you do when you go to buy a car, right? Market research. You're looking at a Hyundai Tucson, right? How many of them are there in your area? What are they all selling for? Where are you going to get the best deal? Understand the demand for affordable housing in the area where your park's located. Typical rule of thumb in our book, I like to see metros over 100,000. Median home price over 100,000 typically tells me that area is going to support it, but that's not a deal breaker. Right? You get a park in a town of 12,000 people, and there's just as much demand and or waiting list as there is in a metro of 1.4 million. So don't necessarily let that be a deal killer. Analyze the local rental market, the vacancy rates around other parks. Due diligence. Cindy, if you were going to be out at Seco, I would say like the one thing I would tell you to go to is Ferd Neiman's due diligence pitfall seminar, which is about an hour long. He's seen it all. I've seen a whole bunch, and there's guys that have seen way more than I've ever seen. But performing that comprehensive DD process, financial records, maintenance history, zoning issues, big deal killers. What's the infrastructure underground look like? A lot of these parks have clay sewer lines, right? You don't want to mess with Orangeburg. That's collapse for sure. If it isn't, if someone just needs to blow on. But on clay lines, you're going to see a whole lot of root intrusion and stuff. You want to look for major dips, major breaks. The infrastructure and utilities on older parks, nowadays, when they built parks, what did we plug in? I don't even know if they had a toaster, right? Now there's like 9 TVs in the mobile home, computers, and you make sure your electric pedestals or amps are pushing out 150 amps. And on older properties, you'll see 50 amps. And those were there originally because that's all they needed, that would support an RV. But you're going to need new electrical pedestals if you're at 50 amp. And that's something
we just came across that at our own park. Is we have some older pedestals that are at 50, and the new ones coming in, they're saying 100, 150. So
yeah, 100, 150. So it just depends. And I've seen parks that are operating just fine on 50 amps, and by just fine, I mean maybe it pops here and there. But at the end of the day, I would assume that's a fire hazard because nobody had 6 48-inch TVs back in the day. And maybe there's only 3 in there. There's a refrigerator, there's a microwave, there's a washer, there's a dryer, all that stuff wasn't running. And let's just be honest, you know, in America, like as conservative as we try to be on our own pocket, try to figure out the nicest way to put this, you know, the majority of our tenant base might not be so concerned about having 19 things running all the time, right? It's probably not on the first thought process that they're thinking. Tenant screening is a big deal. You just need to have your systems in place and run them like clockwork. Your screening process is gonna make sure that your tenants are responsible and reliable, just like you would if you're gonna move somebody into your spare bedroom across from your room in your house. I need a background check. I need a credit check. I want to see your rental history, and does your income support, you know, 2.25 or 2.5 over your all in after utilities or whatever the structure looks like for that property. I have had conversations with Shane that I've enjoyed before on property management. And you just need to really take a look at it and consider how close is it to your house? You're going to be managing this park yourself? You're going to hire a professional company, or is there someone on the ground right now and all you need is eyes and ears to relay messages to the tenants, violation notices if you need them, community newsletters pushed out, paper and new leases and showing vacant units. Typically, I would go around and just look for the home that has the nicest presentation, right? And typically that individual owns their home, and the person that has the highest sense of pride and community ownership within that community, if you can get them on board as your manager, that's a wonderful thing, but it's not always the case. Obviously your lease
on-site management is so very important when you're not close to that park. But what I will say, what I'm very impressed in Jason's operation is all the SOPs they have in place, the standard operating procedures, from the top end all the way down to the low end, right? Everything in between. And that way, if something does happen and you plug and play a new employee, add a new property, all those processes and procedures are there, makes things go smoother. I won't say smoothly, but smoother than
much smoother. And you think you have them all in place until the next opportunity pops up that you haven't seen, and then comes another SOP. And so as you deal with this, one of the biggest things I just don't like repeating myself. So I stopped and I said, we're going to write all this down. We're going to put in SOPs, and there's a program called Trainual that we could plug them all into. And if I received the call, when we were managing the properties, if I received a call from a park manager, like, how do I fill out this lease? I stopped answering questions. And my next question was, is it in Trainual? Because you just go there and how do I fill out a lease? It'll pop up the SOP. I don't know. I haven't looked in Trainual. Okay, call me back. If it's not in there, definitely let me know. I'll get one in there. But they're just taking the path of least resistance, right? And that's why we created that. And
I love it.
Anybody needed an SOP or had a question on something specific, I'm happy to share that stuff, because somebody had to help us in the beginning. So you do all this market research, you do all this due diligence, you do all this underwriting, you send out all these letters of intent, you negotiate the deal, you got your property management figured out. A lot of efforts are required to successfully get your park under contract, perform proper due diligence, execute the timeline on time, secure your financing, and then successfully close the property, because the seller needs to be playing along at the same pace you are as well in order for that marriage to work. And then comes successfully operating your mobile park. So there's a lot of processes ongoing. And I would also say you always want to focus on community relations with your tenants. A good idea I heard from, I think it was Frank Rolfe one time, but there was a little hotline 1-800 number magnet that they handed out, and it went on all the refrigerators. So again, feeling understood, somebody's listening. Shane's not going to pick up his phone at 11:30 at night if I have a sink running and I have the audacity to call Shane and tell him to fix it at 11:30. But I could leave a message on the 1-800 number line, and psychologically, it's probably the same thing in my head. I know they're going to get it. I know Shane's going to call me back or whoever's in charge, and we'll do things like just send our manager out there with a bunch of cookies and a table and a tablecloth and answer questions or organize a community cleanup. And you'll know real quick at that point who's super engaged in the community, who doesn't want anything to do with it, and who's just antisocial and want to be a hermit. And that's okay, right? And then
How important is that
go ahead.
community engagement when you're taking on a new park, right?
So on the onboarding process of the new park, it's typically you're dealing with the seller. You know, they're worried either A, the tenants know that they're selling or they don't. And if the tenants know, that's fine. If they don't know, I almost prefer that in most cases, because we don't want, I mean, you just Google mobile home park acquisitions and you'll see these large corporations that scoop up these A+ parks, and those lot rents go from 200 to 600 overnight. The majority of the sellers I deal with, they don't want anything to do with that because they care for their people. And it's not a good move anyways, because you don't want to start a mass exit. So you want to make a good first impression. I've been on site before on day one. I don't necessarily say, hi, I'm an owner, right? And I have found it easier if there's a question about some repair expense that's needed, especially in those crucial first week, that, you know, okay, I'm going to take good notes of this. Let me just repeat back to you what you said here. I'm going to run it by the board, and then we'll get you your answer, right? Otherwise, you're going to have a line tenants potentially, you know, want to talk to you in that moment. But we'll go around, knock on every door, hand out a new welcome packet. It's got our community engagement letter, who we are, reassuring them that, you know, we're not here to disrupt their lives. We're actually here to make them better, because in making their lives better first, inevitably, my life, Nick's life, all of our team members' lives are going to be better. And then the surrounding community that doesn't even live in the park, their lives are going to be affected by this ripple, right? Because the park's either mismanaged with poor tenants, and maybe you come in and clean it up or get rid of the bad apples, and everyone appreciates that. And then we'll have our community guidelines. I'll run through those with them, and they typically appreciate it, because they want to live somewhere that's affordable, clean, and safe. And you'll find sometimes the biggest complaints are, well, my yard is spotless all the time, but he doesn't cut his grass, and look at it, he's got a garage sale out there that's permanent in perpetuity, right? It's just storage in the front yard, and it's not fair. So everything has to be applied equally across the board throughout your community. You might have your favorites, right? Your favorite tenant, but you really just have to be fair across the board. And then I'll open it up for questions. Do you have any questions for me? I'll even ask them, like, if you could give me the top 3 things that you think we could do better than what has been happening. What are those? I'm not promising I'm executing on those, but I want to know. What'd you say, Shane?
Prime the pump, try to get the juices flowing. And
yeah, we just get the juices flowing and positively engage them. I've seen other operators take over communities and never on site. Like, it's all out of state, which is fine. We have properties out of state too. At this point, it doesn't matter if it's 45 minutes or 45 hours from our house. But you definitely want to be there for that transition, because put yourself in the tenant's shoes, you would be concerned too, especially with the negative stigma that kind of does surround just the word mobile home park, not affordable housing. If you have friends that aren't in the industry and you say mobile home park, there's typically a handful of questions that follow. And most people that aren't in this industry kind of have an assumption that, oh, they're terrible. You must be a slumlord. That's not the case at all. That's just the stigma that's been built over time. And one of the things, at Elephant Capital, and Nick and I are passionate about, is trying to relieve that stigma, because it's just not true. There's way more great people in this industry than there are not. And it's a shame, like everything else in life, a few bad apples can F up the whole tree. I don't know how else to put it.
On that note,
Go
how
ahead.
important is having on-site managers on your properties? Is it key for all of them, or is there a certain size park where it becomes required?
If you have someone that you trust as your eyes and ears, you definitely want that. I'm working on one with my brother now, right? 13 pads, his first acquisition to kind of move him into the business. And I've already identified the individual on the ground, like, this is going to be your eyes and ears. And yes, at 13 pads, like, losing a lot rent is a pretty big deal at that point. But it's more of an insurance policy for the quality control, the risk management, the tenant satisfaction, the streamline, the maintenance and repairs, especially during that first year and those first 2 years. If it were up to me, I'd always have someone, Shane, with eyes and ears that I can call. And if you don't, if we're doing DD research on a property we haven't been to and I can't get out there, I'll go to Upwork and just pay someone $50 to take a GoPro on their car and drive the whole entire park for me, and then send me that video. And I've even done that on parts that we have that I haven't been able to make it out to. Typically, I'll have the manager do that. But sometimes I'll secret shop our own park and send somebody around without letting the manager know, just so I can make sure everything adds up. Which it typically does, but it's your investment, it's your baby too. So you're taking care of it kind of in the same mentality that you would almost your own child. And I don't know if I'm rambling here, because I tend to
No,
do
you're
that.
good.
So stop me.
And I just want to jump in and just kind of ask the question, and if you don't know, that's okay too, because you have a expertise in the mobile home parks. When we talk about mobile home park investing versus the multifamily, industry, what are the special challenges and special opportunities then with mobile home parks that you don't have in, say, small apartment buildings?
So I don't have much experience in small apartment buildings, but I can touch on what I think you're asking. My brother kind of sees the freedom and where we're at. It's hard to buy into it in the first year or two, and until really someone start producing. He's in a corporate job, but he kind of sees it now, right? And he calls me up and he wants to start flipping single family homes. I said, you do whatever you want, no problem. I'm pretty established here. It took a while to get to this point, but I know a guy, and I'm going to put you in touch with him. Let him tell you, because he does both. Single family homes, I would imagine, are similar to apartment complexes. The benefit of the apartments, you're stacking your homes like this.
Right.
Single family home market's pretty saturated. A lot of people doing it. I can at least look at our industry and say, look, there's X amount here. Like, we know what the supply is. We know what the demand is. We know that the curve is in our favor. That would be the biggest benefit to me. If I would have gotten a phone call at 6 a.m. that said, are you interested in single family houses? I would have still hung up. I would have still Googled it. And there's a potential that I wouldn't be sitting here today if that was the question. Because it's just a really niche industry to get into. And it's hard. It's hard to get into. But once you have your first park, which is the hardest to get, things start progressing. And it might not seem like it in the moment, right? But pretty rapidly. And where most people live their lives on a 2-week paid day schedule. We kind of look at it as our year, our fiscal year is like a 4-month period. So we have 3 years in a year, if that makes sense. It's kind of how we break it down. From that point, you do have to pull back and look at the larger picture, right? Because it might not seem as good as you thought it was, and you're on month 18, but just look at month 48 if you just keep doing what you're doing. And again, you know, the goal is to get in, refi, and what are you going to do with that money? Put it into another property, and maybe you're just okay with 3. You got 3 great cash flowing properties, and you're tapped out, and that's good for you. I know guys that have 1 cash flowing property, and they're tapped out, not necessarily because they don't have the capital to do it. They're just okay with the cash flow that they have now. They don't need more. And I know that the headaches or the opportunities behind it, or they're older, they don't care. They don't have to.
Everybody's needs and wants are different. That's for sure.
Everybody's needs and wants are different.
Yeah.
Right. Some people are happy with $2,000 a month, and some are happy with 10. And, you know, I remember when I made 40,000 a year, I think, Shane, I told you this, I was like, man, if I could only make 46, my life would be perfect. And I'm like 23 years old. And then that happened. And I'm like, well, I thought things were going to be perfect. Well, how am I still short on money now? And
always chasing that goal. Yep.
It always chasing that goal, right? More money, more problems. More money, more expenses. So it's all relative. Family, God first, business second, everything else will fall into line.
Amen to that.
Yeah, try to just get a good night's sleep and nourish your body with good thoughts and good food. And if you find yourself in a room full of people where you're thinking, this is kind of a negative vibe, you need to think. There's a good book, I forget what it's called, The Yellow Bus, but in our lives, if you metaphorically take it back, you say we have 1 bus ride, and you're driving, Shane, you look in your rearview mirror, who's on that bus? Is everybody that you can see in that rearview mirror, do you want them on your bus? And if you don't, life's too short not to pull over and kick them off your bus right away. If they're negative, or they're not part of your mindset, or their goals aren't aligned with yours in life, then just like positivity is contagious, negativity is exponentially more contagious. So you need to remove those factors from your life so that doesn't get in the way of your mindset as an entrepreneur, because negative mindsets, negative people can really just put a whole hindrance on you, especially when you're exhausted at the end of the day. It's the last thing I want to do. I don't put up with negative talk in our organization or just period. I would rather deal with people that are positive. And that's coming from a guy who's kind of built the foundation on no elephants in the room, which at times makes me the jerk, but I'm not. If there's an elephant in the room, it's time to discuss it now, because it's going to be much easier to address that the moment it's recognized, then to kind of say, oh, yeah, we know there's an elephant in the room, but we'll bring it up like later towards closing. No, get it out of the way ahead of time and figure out if everybody's on the same page and you can move forward. And I would apply that same principle to life in general, like your spouse or your children or whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't always make you the popular person, but
no, people think I'm an a-hole sometimes, but I'm not. I'm just saying, hey, I know that you guys all see this. If nobody wants to bring it up, I have no problem saying it. I'm just saying how it is. And that's how it should be. And we should all be able to have those conversations as adults and not get mad at each other. Because if it doesn't work for me, then I'm not going to do it. If it doesn't work for you, you're not going to do it. So the goal is, how do we make it work for all of us? So it's a win-win-win-win-win.
to address one of those elephants in the room, I just wanted to bring up the point, we are approaching an hour. I don't know what your time commitments are, so I just want to be cognizant of your time.
Why don't we,
really
are there any questions from anybody that's here, or if there isn't, Shane can provide my email. Feel free to reach out.
We do have Cindy Galloway has her hand up. So Cindy, I will bring you on. You have your camera on and everything. So I'm going to bring you right up to front and ask away.
Okay.
Hey, Cindy.
I have a question. So I recently had you send me one of your park deals to look at, and then I realized how inadequate I am to go through all that paperwork. So
which park, if you don't
it was the North
ask?
Carolina.
Okay.
But it's good. I'm re-going through that paperwork just to get familiar with all the terminology and see what questions I have. But my question actually for today is, what is your thought on starting from scratch, finding a piece of land and starting your own park setup versus acquiring an existing one? Because there's lots of land in my area, and there's a lot of the younger generations that are, into the tiny home community. And so I was looking at some larger pieces of property, and I have a meeting with one of our county folks to talk about, the regulations and the zoning to find out what am I looking for.
That was where I was going to lead with, Cindy, and I would definitely love to pick your brain on this offline here. I'm kind of spread out throughout the United States. I talk to so many people every single day. I can't count on one hand the number of developments that I know are. One of them's in Louisville. I know that in Texas, which is like as America as it gets, you can kind of do whatever you want down there. But building from scratch would not be me personally, is not where I would want to head. And the first thought that came to my mind was I want a new Pathfinder. So do I go to a dealership that has a Pathfinder on there that has everything I want, except for these nice rims? Or do I go to the factory and build one and potentially pay more? Now, that's a bad example, because if I was building it in this metaphor, I would be responsible for the parts, the labor, the car, and then purchasing the car, and then insurance on the car, and then I would need to find 3 passengers to ride in it with. And if you're picking up what I'm laying down, by that I mean you have an existing property. Maybe it's 20 paths and there's only 14 homes there, and there's 8 tenants. Well, you don't have to start from scratch. You have to find 5 tenants, maybe remodel those homes, and then put another 6 on there. And capital wise, you've spent incrementally less to produce the same result.
Okay.
And when you're talking about developments in general, the first thought that comes to my mind is, 3 years, right? I don't know how long it's going to take to build that. I do love the tiny home idea. I do know that affordable housing is short, and that, when HUD took over, a lot of these new homes, they have to be at least HUD stamped, right? 76 or newer. And even then, we run into some zoning issues where they just don't want mobile home parks, probably because it's a parking lot and the tax reasons. Now, if at some point we're going to need more affordable housing, if that's the route that they take, and they say, the tiny home gets planted on your land, because we're just landowners using our land. And if that tiny home gets planted there, is that no longer a parking lot? Is that a tiny home planted on your land? And then what does that look like, from a tax liability standpoint versus the parking lot? The reason that would obviously benefit the county is because, more often than not, between the police department, the fire department, and all the children, and then the taxes that are being paid on the mobile homes, like the city's not coming out on top, or the county's not coming out on top in regards to the income that they're receiving tax-wise versus what they're putting out, even just on a basic police level, right? And then if the whole part, there's a bunch of kids going to school, I can just see them sitting around a round table like, well, this is the home park, like we're paying for all these stuff, and so that's kind of where that comes from. If you do want to be plugged into somebody that I know is under development, I do have a good contact for you, so you can email me and I can kind of plug that into you offline.
Okay.
In case we get cut here, to touch base on what you said, that's kind of overwhelming. I'm sure it is, right? That didn't take 10 minutes to put together. That's like hours and hours of talking, and you can tell just by looking at it. So that same exact sheet that you're looking at, I provided a condensed solid version to Shane that just has 2 tabs. One of them would be the first sheet that has like the lots and the vacant lots and the lot rent that you're looking at. And I want him to send everyone in the group a copy. And so the first time you do it, Cindy, I have it, and Shane will provide the instructions, but it's like, if you just fill out the yellow parts and then you bring it to me, I can fill out all the rest, the tax info, the parcel, the APN for you, and then do what I offered to Shane was 1 free deal review. If you get that sheet filled out, you get on the phone with the seller, you fill out the yellow parts, you call me, I'll review it with you, finish the sheet, and just provide you what my thoughts are. And then I would encourage you to go get thoughts from Shane, and Cindy does a wonderful job underwriting. So yeah, you'll receive that. That way you'll have your own copy, because that is, when you're on the phone with the seller, it's a very easy path from A to B to grab all that. Thank you, Shane. To grab all that information you want. And Shane, scroll down just a little bit. Like the most are up a little bit. Like, yeah, right there. So like the core details right here. Like, John, how many lots do you have? Well, I got 14 lots. Well, specify that. Because John might be saying he has 14 homes, but he has 25 lots. So how many lots do you have with or without homes? Okay, how many have homes on them? How many of those homes are occupied? How many are vacant? 6 are vacant. Why are they vacant? Well, we're in the middle of remodeling them all, where we have a waiting list. How many are owned by the tenants and the park on? You just follow that line all the way down. And if you can't fill it all out, like in that additional detail section, floodplain, that's public info. You can look that up on the FEMA and the Fermet maps. More importantly, Shane, scroll down to the utility section there, because this is gonna really play with your expense ratio. So what does the utility setup within that property look like? Is the landlord paying for water, sewer, trash, and cutting the grass? As if so, it's not a terrible thing. There's probably a lot of money there that we can recapture simply by either billing back the water, getting sub meters on it, which I use Metron meters. They kind of have a cell phone signal. So every day I can wake up, open my dashboard, see all of our properties by individual unit. I can tell who left, who took a shower all night, or who has a leak. Like it's one or the other if it's running all night. You can kind of see the water usage. So I definitely recommend that. And just in terms of recapturing your water expense, when you have those metrics right in front of you, it's really easy to stay proactive on any potential water leaks you have. And even more so, isolate. Let's say your water bill is $4,000, but your tenant's water meters are at $3,200. Well, where's that $800 coming from? Because it's not flowing through any of the meters that are going to the homes. Right away, we know we have a leak somewhere. So let's go try to figure out where that is. But if you can, as much of this stuff as you can snag on your first call, and you might not get it your first time. And I think Shane and Cindy know too. If my time allows it, I have no problem helping anyone out. You say, hey, I can't get him to give this information up. I don't want to commit to all 17,000 people in your group, right? But shoot me an email, right? If we need to call them and do a little digging, we can. I'm happy to help. And all that blue stuff,
Jason. And if it's all right with you, I will share your email address with everybody. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine. And then you can share both those handouts in that core sheet. I hope people take a look at that and they're able to utilize that. I just shared it with another mastermind group that Nick just got out of. So that's why that was a last minute push to you. Because they said, what can you give us? I'm like, well, I know what I did for Cindy and Shane. I put together this PDF, right? And then I'm like, well, this would be a more useful tool, especially for guys in your group. And just make a copy of it, Cindy, and keep copying it. And then you can use it moving on down the line. It's a good snapshot.
And Cindy Hook and I were talking about, doing some more underwriting courses, not just for single family homes, but right now we're doing a lot of underwriting for mobile home parks because we're shopping, we're buying, we're making offers. So I think we're going to record some of those, but I think we're going to have to put on a delayed release because some of the things that we're talking about, we don't want out until we either pass on the property or get it under contract.
Right.
So we'll have to negotiate that a little bit, but if you have something going on and you want us to look at it as well, if Jason is not available, reach out to Cindy and I. We'll help you out.
Yeah, 100% go to them. Go to them and then first. So and then if you need to.
And Jason's in the group. He's posting deals. He's available. We do appreciate him. He's an awesome resource for us and awesome resource for all of you. So
yeah, I wish I could. There's so many groups. There's 8 or 9 of them out there, and I wish I could spend more time in them, but I hate to pop in and out like that. I did have one question on your Monday guys' calls that I see. What are you guys doing on those calls? Are you doing deal reviews live?
Deal reviews. Yep. So people are bringing deals in that they're stuck with or trying to find leads or find solutions to. We're there to help out. And I think we had about 6 this past Monday. It was very exciting.
And that's at like a 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock start time?
I think that's 4 o'clock. Yes. Eastern time.
Okay. I will be at Seco this weekend. I'd love to hop on a few of those. Just
absolutely
talk, just listen.
It's one of these days we're going to talk about mobile home parks, a deal on that, and whether it's Cindy and I have to bring it to that group to do it, we will.
Yeah, that's totally, yeah. I'm down. So you guys are mainly doing deal reviews on single family stuff or?
Whatever people bring.
And yeah, just deal reviews, right? Let's review deals together. That's how we get smarter. So I love it. I love it. I love what you guys are doing. I think you're doing a great job, and really, really fortunate to have come into contact with both you guys and now whoever in your group that has the pleasure of watching this.
Jason,
Stay tuned. We
wear a
have
mask
more
on
to
that
come.
plane.
Go ahead.
I
Cindy.
tell them to wear a mask on that plane, Jason. I got COVID over the weekend from flying.
Oh yeah, it's going around again. You did get COVID over the weekend?
Yep, I got it from flying. That's why you don't see my pretty face.
Well, I wasn't looking at the screen faces anyways, but I am thinking of it. So I remember what it looked like.
Yeah.
That sucks. How do you feel?
I'm at the tail end of it. I was hoping this morning I tested and it still showed up that I have it. I still have some congestion in my throat, but my ears are bothering me. So, but I contracted it last Wednesday. So
I'm gonna wear a burqa.
I mean, seriously. I mean, I'd
Get kicked
wear
off the plane.
Yeah, face mask, shields, everything. I'm the one who always catches it too, but it's what it is. But have fun. Have fun. I'm jealous.
Yeah, I will. Stop by that park in Georgia, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday there. I'll call you, and maybe if there's something important going on, I'll put my camera on and just give you a little snapshot of Texas photos.
That's an annual event.
I think Seco is twice a year. So there was one in Vegas, I believe, and then this one for just the Vegas purposes, that tends to be the hot spot. And then MHI and Seco is more formal than MHI, is a little more casual. Both great events though. And again, you get a little bit of networking. There's some great courses and classes that I'm excited to sit in with. And people have been asking me for 2 years to show up to one of these, and I've never pulled the trigger. I network from home. We're all used to doing that from COVID round one, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited to go. It'll be a good time.
Well, maybe we can join you
I
next.
wish we could meet in person, but we'll catch up next time.
We will. We'll make it happen.
Well, again, one final call for questions. Anybody else have questions? Cindy, were you all set?
Yeah, I'm all set.
All right. Again, reach
We
out.
found a mover, you guys.
Yes, I saw that text. That's awesome.
So
Very excited.
We're just working on the date now.
Okay.
And you're ready now to move on to buying our next park?
What was that?
Are you ready for us now to go on by the next park? You to join us?
Yeah.
You can join us, yeah.
It's definitely hands down easier than building a new one.
Yeah.
But we could talk offline about that. I'll give you my thoughts.
Cindy, also another good resource is Libby. I think I mentioned to that. She built a park, and it took her, Shane, a year? She built an RV park and it was a year.
Campground.
Yeah. I mean, that's what my daughter wants to do. She wants to do an RV park, and I have a friend that owns a camping park, and it's high maintenance and you have a lot of turnover because people are always in and out. And so I think having monthly is better.
Yeah.
But she's not excited about like mobile home. So we talked about, tiny home, container homes, because that's just kind of what the kids are doing today. And the older people are wanting to bring their motor homes in. I think you could still have a mix of all of that, save a few spaces for the snowbirds that come back and forth. So that was our thought.
Yeah, I misunderstood. Building the RV park is a little different than going full boat in on a mobile home park from scratch, right?
Mhm.
You don't have the X amount per home that you have to fill. You just get the pads utility ready and then, put your sign up.
Right.
Have you done your market research?
So I'm not excited about like RV where people can come for a weekend. I'm more of I want monthlies. So that leans more towards mobile home park style,
Mhm.
running it.
And
But
where do you live?
I'm in Washington State.
Okay. Today I spoke with a guy that's owned an RV park for, I don't know, 40 years, of mom and pop. He's like 84. And his wife just got a brain tumor. I'm not gonna say the city here out loud, but he is somebody that is still out there every single day because he loves it.
Mhm.
And if you want the absolute rock bottom truth on it, and he's developed it too, I'll just give you his name and number, introduce you, then let you pick his brain because he loves talking about it. And he has, he's 84 years old. He's been doing it his whole life. So he'd be a really great resource.
Okay.
But
Appreciate
yeah,
that, Jason.
yeah, that went by really quick. So I appreciate you guys having me, and anybody needs anything, reach out. You have any questions on anything else, don't hesitate to reach out. Shane will drop my 2 little value adds, I hope, and I
Yep.
wish everybody the best of luck. Have a great solid week, and let's crush it next week. It's almost Monday again, right?
Yeah.
Just like that.
Take
I
care.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Jason.
All right, guys, thank you so much.
Bye.
Have a
Yep.
good night.
Bye.
Bye.